Chapter 4. Government, an Unnecessary Evil. Because the weight of governmental power has such influence on the structure and functioning of any society, ideas concerning social organization have typically centered on the structure of the proposed society's government. Most social thinkers, however, have taken government as a given. They've debated over the particular form of government they wish their ideal societies to have, but have seldom attempted to examine the nature of government itself. But if one doesn't know clearly what government is, one can hardly determine what influences governments will have on society. Government is a coercive monopoly which has assumed power over and certain responsibilities for every human being within the geographical area which it claims as its own. A coercive monopoly is an institution maintained by the threat and/or use of physical force, the initiation of force, to prohibit competitors from entering its field of endeavor. A coercive monopoly may also use force to compel customer loyalty, as, for example, a protection racket. Government has exclusive possession and control within its geographical area of whatever functions it is able to relegate to itself, and it maintains this control by force of its laws and its guns, both against other governments and against any private individuals who might object to its domination. To the extent that it controls any function, it either prohibits competition, as with the delivery of first-class mail, or it permits it on a limited basis only, as with the American educational system. It compels its citizen customers by force of law either to buy its services or, if they don't want them, to pay for them anyway. While it is obvious that any government must hold a monopoly over at least some activities, like lawmaking, within its geographical territory in order to govern at all, some thinkers have held that a properly limited government would not initiate force and would therefore not be a coercive monopoly. The government thus envisioned would be restricted to what its advocates consider to be minimum essential government functions, such as the defense of life, liberty, and property against both domestic and foreign aggressors, as with the police and military, arbitration of disputes, as with the courts, and the administration of justice, with the courts and the penal system. A few of these advocates of limited government have realized that taxation is theft, theft being the act of taking the rightful property of another by force, stealth, or deceit, and have attempted to ensure against governmental initiation of force by forbidding their theoretical governments to levy taxes. Any taxes. But not only are their systems of voluntary government support rather hazy and unconvincing, even if such a non-taxing government could be made to work, governmental initiation of force would still not have been eliminated. A government, in order to be a government rather than simply another business firm in an open market with actual or potential competition, must maintain a monopoly in those areas which it has preempted. In order to ensure its continued existence, this monopoly must be coercive. It must prohibit competition. Thus, government, in order to exist as a government at all, must initiate force in order to prohibit any citizens from going into business in competition with it in those fields which it claims as exclusively its own. If it could be proved to businessmen that those basic governmental functions of protection and defense of person and property, arbitration of disputes, and rectification of injustice could be performed very satisfactorily by private, free market businesses, and this book will prove that they can, any supposedly non-coercive limited government would be faced with a crucial dilemma. Either it would have to initiate force to prevent free enterprise from entering its markets, or free enterprise would push government out of business, and hence out of existence. As will be shown, government is unavoidably inefficient and expensive. If government didn't compel its citizens to deal with it by maintaining itself as a coercive monopoly, the free market could offer really effective services, efficiently and at lower prices, and the government would lose all of its customers. Government is, and of necessity must be, a coercive monopoly, for in order to exist, it must deprive entrepreneurs of the right to go into business in competition with it, and it must compel all of its citizens to deal with it exclusively in the areas it has preempted. Any attempt to devise a government which did not initiate force is an exercise in futility, because it is an attempt to make a contradiction work. Government is, by its very nature, an agency of initiated force. If it ceased to initiate force, it would cease to be a government and become, in simple fact, another business firm in a competitive market. Nor can there be any such thing as a government which is partially a free market business, because there can be no compromise between freedom and brute force. Either an organization is a business, maintaining itself against competition by excellence and satisfying customer wants, or it is a gang of thieves, existing by brute force and preventing competition by force when it can do so. It can't be both. Further, since government is not a market monopoly, it can only be a coercive monopoly. No third alternative exists. The prohibition of competition on which government depends for its existence is an aggressive interference with the free market and forms the basis for all the other many interferences with the market of which the government has been guilty. Since government must infringe the right of free trade in order to exist, how can it be expected to refrain from other interferences with the market and the rights of its citizen subjects? People who grow up amid the democratic traditions of the West are apt to feel that this governmental initiation of force and disruption of the market is justifiable, as long as the government is one which is chosen by the people through a democratic process of free elections. They feel that under a democratic government, whatever the government does is done by ourselves to ourselves, and is therefore permissible. But the fallacy of this notion is readily apparent when one considers the people of the democratic country as individuals rather than as insignificant fragments of a collective whole. The belief that the people of a democracy rule themselves through their elected representatives, though sanctified by tradition and made venerable by multiple repetitions, is actually mystical nonsense. In any election, only a percentage of the people vote. Those who can't vote because of age or other disqualifications, and those who don't vote because of confusion, apathy, or disgust at a Tweedledum, Tweedledummer choice, can hardly be said to have any voice in the passage of the laws which govern them. Nor can the individuals as yet unborn, who will be ruled by those laws in the future. And out of those who do exercise their franchise, the large minority who voted for the loser are also deprived of a voice, at least during the term of the winner they voted against. But even the individuals who voted and who managed to pick a winner aren't actually ruling themselves in any sense of the word. They voted for a man, not for the specific laws which will govern them. Even all those who had cast their ballots for the winning candidate would be hopelessly confused and divided if asked to vote on these actual laws. Nor would their representative be bound to abide by their wishes, even if it could be decided what these collective wishes were. And besides all this, a large percentage of the actual power of a mature democracy such as the USA is in the hands of the tens of thousands of faceless appointed bureaucrats who are unresponsive to the will of any citizen without special pull. Under a democratic form of government, a minority of the individuals governed select the winning candidate. The winning candidate then proceeds to decide issues largely on the basis of pressure from special interest groups. What it actually amounts to is rule by those with political pull over those without it. Contrary to the brainwashing we've received in government-run schools, democracy, the rule of the people through their elected representatives, is a cruel hoax. Not only is democracy mystical nonsense, it's also immoral. If one man has no right to impose his wishes on another, then 10 million men have no right to impose their wishes on the one, since the initiation of force is wrong, and the assent of even the most overwhelming majority can never make it morally permissible. Opinions, even majority opinions, neither create truth nor alter facts. A lynch mob is democracy in action. So much for mob rule. The very word government means some men governing, ruling over others. But to the degree that men are ruled by other men, they exist in slavery. Slavery is a condition in which one is not allowed to exercise his right of self-ownership, but is ruled by someone else. Government, the rule of some men over others by initiated force, is a form of slavery. To advocate government is to advocate slavery. To advocate limited government is to put oneself in the ridiculous position of advocating limited slavery. To put it simply, government is the rule of some men over others by initiated force, which is slavery, which is wrong.